What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Sarah, everyone here, bringing you another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger, episode 10. Yeah, so we're 10 episodes in, pretty crazy, already that far in. This episode is called The Little Giant Big Star. It's a pretty cool episode. It does introduce our 11th Kyuranger. Yes, we just had Draco Master, or sorry, not Draco Master, Draco Commander, or Ryu Commander, or whatever. Ryu Commander. Now we're getting our Sky Blue Kyuranger, and that is pretty cool. But this was a really cool episode as a whole. It definitely seems a bit interesting how they decided to put them one after another. Although in the cases of Shou, it was more like he had to get the ability to be part of them, but he's not like officially. And in Shotro's case, it was more like he was given. It's a different story. We'll get into that. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this episode because it is a pretty cool one. The episode actually starts for once with the combination. With the Kurano combination rather than starting with some other story going on. So that is a little different. We finally have one of those kind of episodes where it starts with them in the middle of an actual fight, which is cool in my opinion. They end up fighting this monster, this Malastrate known as Mothma. Not Mothra from Godzilla, for those that know like Godzilla. I don't really know Godzilla that much, but I know certain names and certain monsters, like kaiju beast or whatever. Anyway, Mothma, interesting creature. He's piloting one of the Consumerez, and they're fighting it. But eventually, at one point, Mothma does choose to evade battle. This then leads to them returning back to the ship, where we see Shotaro practicing with the Saiza blaster, trying to transform in some way, and trying different Kyotama, but failing. Thing is, when a bunch of the Kyurangers come in, he tries to show them him transforming. Unfortunately, when he does it, nothing happens. The light comes out, but that's about it. He doesn't actually get to transform. So at that point, it's sort of like, well, that's unfortunate. But he still wants to be part of this. He still wants to be engaged in battle and fight alongside the Kyurangers. So this then leads to Lucky saying, what happens is that Stinger says, you shouldn't be here on the ship. You don't need to be here. And the thing is that Stinger's like, Shotaro's like, but you saved me, Stinger. And the thing is that in reality, he's saying, he said, but you brought me here. And he said, yes, because I was trying to save you. It wasn't because I was trying to make you a Kyuranger. So that is a difference. And Stinger obviously being kind of that, not as kind, a little bit, worse off character that has a lot more of a seriousness to him. It's really hard to take him as someone to listen to, just because he's so tough and not just a warm character like most of them are. But he's still really cool. Anyway, so because of this, Lucky tries to cheer him up, because Lucky and him obviously Lucky and Totoro do get along pretty well, and Lucky says that he'll bring him back to Earth. Lucky goes with him in his Voyager, trying to bring him back, but the thing is that Shotaro actually brings with him the Saiza blaster. At that point, though, he ends up eventually jumping out with Lucky, and what happens is that they end up having to. Lucky ends up chasing after Shotaro, and eventually they end up confronting Mothma. They actually just come across him. So this leads to, oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that they do use a Kyotama when they're in when they're fighting Mothma initially, which is like this thing called Skatum Kyotama, which is basically like a reflective one. But anyway, continuing on, what happens is that they end up fighting him, and at one point, when they're fighting, Shotaro ends up dropping a Kyotama, which is, the Ogami Kyotama, which holds the Supreme Commander, Big Bear. His ghost is inside of it. So because of this, he ends up fighting, even as a ghost, he's still able to fight Mothma, and eventually Mothma does end up disappearing. But also in the process, at one point, the Supreme Bear Commander does take over the body of Shotaro, which is what I predicted would happen, and it also seemed like it was fairly logical that that was what was going on when we saw the previews for this episode, that was what was happening there. So what ends up happening is that he ends up talking with the Big Bear's voice, and eventually they end up discussing things over, and Shotaro doesn't like that he keeps on possessing him, but it is what it is. But the commander's not very much so accepting of Shotaro being a Kyuranger due to the fact that he is so young, and he doesn't feel like it would be safe. And also after having Shou, who he ended up having to protect, and felt like he wasn't that deserving of his role as a commander or whatever, felt kind of worried. And part of the reason why his spirit was not left to rest was because he felt he felt concerned with the future of the Kyurangers and what Shou would bring to that effort. So because of this, what ends up happening is that they eventually end up discussing things, and we end up seeing back in the Orion that apparently they end up finding Nagare on the ground incapacitated, and they think that someone must have hurt him. And so what happens is that they bring him back to the main base of the Orion from where he was located, and they discuss things. And Shou decides to do something very stupid, which is he decides to try to be a detective and figure out who it was. And then at one point he's like, "I'll leave it up to luck, and I'll put it in the the Qlet." And the thing is that it's very stupid, because it's like, the only Kyotama that he actually has in his possession at the time is his own. So when he puts it in the Qlet, it's gonna just be his. So how can you assume it's not gonna be anyone else's? Because no one else gave it to him. We never saw anyone else give in theirs, so clearly it's his. And so they end up tying him up because he admits to it, even though in reality he has no idea. He's just joking around or whatever. But thing is that on top of that, the ship ends up losing its ability to be controlled by others in it. It ends up being pushed towards the sun, so it ends up being pushed on course. At that point, what happens is that they have to deal with this, and this is going on during the initial battle, I forgot to mention. But yeah, so they are trying to figure out things to stop it. At the same time, we do know that from Mothma does mention that he has caused the problem, but the Kyurangers that are on the Orion do not know of this, and Lucky doesn't really mention it, even though in reality you would think maybe that would be nice to just say it, but they learn anyway. So what happens is that that's all going on, and eventually Balance and Raptor are asked to go out on the ship and try to figure it out. Well, Raptor goes out and Balance deals with the ship itself. But at one point, Nagare does wake up. Turns out Nagare was practicing his smiling, which is something he does a lot of, because he's from a planet where emotions aren't really a thing. So he tries to practice smiling so that he can get better at it and hopefully learn how to smile naturally without any real difficulty, rather than frowning or being serious all the time. So, because of this, what actually ended up happening, rather than someone actually beating him up or hurting him, was that he was smiling and he was balancing on a stool, and he fell off the stool and banged his head. That's why he was incapacitated on the ground. It looked as though he had gotten injured or something, when in reality, he actually hadn't. There was also no blood or anything showing that, so, it looked like a crime scene. It really wasn't as big of a deal as it seemed to be. So anyway, they end up trying to deal with figuring out what the problem is, and they discover using a microscopium Kyotama that in reality it is these special cells that are made up of Mothma that are corrupting the ship and making it divert its course towards the sun. So at that point, they don't know what to do. They're panicking. They're trying to figure out stuff. In the meantime, we end up seeing Lucky and Shotaro talking, and Lucky ends up asking. Well, Lucky ends up eating at a kind of food stand, some like kebabs or whatever, and Big Bear thinks that maybe there was a reason why he went there, other than food. It turns out the only reason why he was there was just because he smelled something good and it was food. It wasn't because he knew where Mothma was, and this kind of annoyed Big Bear because he was expecting Lucky to actually have a reasoning that wasn't just, I felt like it. Turns out it was that way, and in a lot of ways, Big Bear, the Supreme Commander, really isn't a big fan of that kind of of way of thinking, and also being lucky. He's not a big fan of that. He finds it weird, and he thinks, how does Shou really consider that a way of deciding things? And like he says, yeah. But in reality, he explains things, and eventually it is understood by the commander, even though at first he's kind of reticent about his way of determining things. So what ends up happening is that Lucky ends up asking Shotaro why he wants to be a Kyuranger. The reason is because during the day when Shotaro and Jiro, his brother, ended up meeting the Kyurangers for the first time, after the fact, he ended up telling Jiro that he wanted to stop dark matter and protect the Earth. And Jiro said, "That sounds great. Definitely do." He was supportive, as a little kid would be, the little brother. He didn't really say that sounds great, but he said great, do that or something like that. And so he wanted to protect the Earth and become a shining star of hope for the Earth as a representative of that planet, also of that galaxy. So that's the thing, because they're all from different galaxies or whatever. So he's from the Milky Way galaxy or whatever, I guess you could say, but you get the point. Anyway, so what ends up happening is that there's this sense of determination and desire to fight alongside them. Big Bear is still not very much so convinced that he should be fighting with them due to the fact that he is so young, and he's fearing that he'll be like Shou and take a risk that will lead to his comrades perishing in battle. But at the same time, he learns that with determination, there still is ability for him to fight, and he sees his desire and learns to accept the comrades that he has. And also Lucky speaks about how sure Shou's not the greatest, he's goofy, he's unreliable, and he causes problems, but you know what? He's still a great commander, and he's the reason why the 9 Kyurangers were found. And this makes Big Bear realize that maybe I was wrong about Shou this whole time. Maybe he is more ready than I assumed he was. So at that point, eventually, they do end up encountering Mothma and getting into a fight with him. And this time, Big Bear does accept Shotaro and give him the opportunity to fight Mothma and the Endeavors, which when that happens, they end up, both of them end up transforming. Shotaro uses the Kugami Kyugama, which is the Ursa Minor Kyogama, initially to transform into his other mode, which is very cool. And overall, it's a pretty exciting moment to see for the first time these two together as one. Now, as a whole, I really love the design of him, and I think that Sky Blue is a really cool Kyuranger. And what's unique about him, as far as things that he does, is that his scarf is used as kind of a whip, which can also lasso enemies and also just hit them and use almost like a chain and mace kind of a situation. Pretty cool, but there's no like ball and chain on the actual like ends of the scarf. It's just the scarf itself is really powerful and really useful apparently, so it's cool. Additionally, what ends up happening is that they continue to fight. They use the final attack, but also prior to that, first I mention is that Shotaro uses the Ursa Major, not Minor, because this time Supreme Commander Big Bear says that he can use his Kyotama, and when he does this, he ends up turning gigantic and tries to stomp all around and stomp on Mothma, and eventually the two of them do end up defeating Mothma, and that leads to the infectious cells that are on the ship disappearing and allowing them to divert their course away from the sun. So, in the end, Shotaro does get to become a Kyuranger. He becomes the Ursa Minor Sky Blue Kyuranger, and very, very cool. I like his design a lot, and at the end and then following all of that, they return back to the Orion, where the Supreme Commander Big Bear ends up talking to all of them, including Shou. Mentions to Shou how I feel that you are prepared and you have some great comrades, and he ends up showing trust in him. Additionally, he asked Shou if he's found Argo. Now you may be wondering yourself, who is Argo, or what is Argo, or whatever. Argo is the device, or basically supposedly the ship that will be used to. That's supposed to be the way of destroying dark matter. For those that are wondering what my impressions of that are, could be referring to Ho-Ho Kyuranger, which is the Ho-Ho Soldier, which is the next Kyuranger that most likely will join them, which looks like another red. And that one shouldn't be coming until July. If that is the case, that could be something. The reason why I'm saying this is because also his Voyager setup is supposed to look like a ship, so that's why I'm assuming that. It could also be the powered up mode for Lucky, which is the one that looks like that everyone was assuming to be the White Ranger, but in reality, I think it's going to be a powered up mode for him. It just looks like it could be another Kyuranger. Could it? Yes, but I don't expect it to. I expect it to be the Orion form for Lucky. We'll see, but yeah, I expect this to be something that they're kind of going to build towards. As far as the previews go, it does show that it looks like we are going to get the Ryu Tetsai combination, which is the combination between Rio Commanders, Rio Voyager, and Shotaro's Sky Blue, Shotaro's Ogami and Kugami Voyagers, the combination between all three of those mechas to create Rio Tetsai, which will be the other big mecha. And that's pretty cool, because then there'll be two major mechas rather than one, which is what we've had now for these past 10 episodes. So it'll be nice to see two of them rather than one, and then eventually we'll probably get a third one later on when we get Ho-Ho Soldier, which will come in July. So that's going to be cool. And also supposedly Rio Tetsai and Kurano can combine. And then there'll be an Orion mecha, which will come much later, which will combine with all three of them and make a much larger, mecha, which will be huge. But yeah, so that's about it. I'd love to know your guys' opinions. Did you enjoy this episode? Do you like Shotaro? Do you like the design of Sky Blue and his abilities? What are you guys looking forward to, and what theories do you have on the future of the show? Do you think I'm right about what are you guys' thoughts about Argo? Do you have any theories? Do you think that I am guessing something that's probably pretty accurate or no? I'd love to know your guys' opinions below. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And goodbye, guys.